Catherine Morgan and I'm a printmaker living here in Leeds. During this time in quarantine, I have been printing in my back garden using my homemade screen printing press, which means that on days like today, where it's really rainy, productivity is quite slow. My current area of interest actually began on my study abroad year last year. I use letters to point to the inherent power of written language, to highlight how letters act as vessels of communication which have meaning bound to them, even when they are taken out of context and not used in a sentence. I aim to subvert this power by using the letter forms as visual tools to create an image that exclusively looks to form and shape. I play with whether the viewer reads my work or sees it as a visual image by layering letters, repeating them, twisting them, or breaking them apart. An essence of language remains, but the letters are no longer bound to their understood meaning. Pushing the boundaries of how long a letter's function remains to the viewer. My work looks to form and shape primarily. I screen print at the moment in order to quickly produce letters, but also to reference the wider dissemination of written communication as a whole through the process of printing. New forms can be created through layering, and I saw each piece as a new form created from the rigid, recognisable structures of the letters. Again, the balance between recognisable language and the abstract form is a line I try to balance so that the viewer feels there is meaning, a message, something to decipher from the forms whilst they examine the impression of language. I also work on a large scale in an attempt to move my prints away from a traditional setting for written language to take, which would primarily be in a book or on a screen. With my prints on the wallpaper strips, although they obviously use language, I am attempting to disrupt the process of reading further by the pieces being predominantly downward driven. Rather than being positioned to be read left to right, which is customary in the Western world, each panel is very separate and linear from ceiling to floor. The disruption of reading is a key theme in my work. Through reading psychological studies on how we read and process language, I've discovered that by decontextualizing and abstracting singular letters, the brain's roots of understanding both the semantic and the phonological aspects of the letter is likely disrupted. Therefore, the viewer is forced to acknowledge the processes of recognition and understanding that usually come as second nature whilst reading. One study claims that recognition of text is limited to one part of the brain, which they label the letterbox. But this is deeply rooted between other parts of the brain that recognise images of objects and faces. A literate brain has very different roots of understanding than that of someone who cannot read. I think my work can be regarded by both because of the formal elements of text that I focus upon. At first, my work was dominated with playing with the viewer's feelings of understanding and comprehension, but now I feel it is extended to an appreciation of form and shape primarily. The process of reading is something we take for granted, and this level of comprehension is something I wanted to draw out, disrupt and destabilise.